Hey there, good evening. It's always nice to see you. It's always nice to be here for the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters and writers and editors and journalists and people who put stuff out. And we're going to talk with one of the, I think, leading journalists in our time, who covers all the stuff we need to know about. In our second segment, we're going to pay him respects and memorial to a great all-time Bronxite who recently passed away. We'll tell you more about that. But first, let's start with my friend Ethan Stark Miller. He's covers New York City and state politics for AM New York Metro. Nice to see you again, Ethan. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Gary. Always good to see you.
So you cut right to the core. The city of yes. Some people say it should be the city of no because they don't like the idea. Mayor Adams' City of Yes plan to boost housing supply draws cheers and jeers at an hour-long hearing. Now, this is a little ways back. It was July 10th that you wrote about it. But let's talk about it. Explain what the City of Yes is, and then we can break down why they like it, why they don't like it, and have people make up their own minds.
Yeah, no, so City of Yes is pretty wonky in some ways. It's actually three sets of zoning changes. So changes to how, the rules that govern where things can be built and how something can be built in the city. The mayor has already actually successfully passed two sets of these changes. One had to do with sustainability and carbon emissions, and one had to do with where businesses can be located. But this third set has to do with where housing can be built. And this has by far been the most controversial. It's drawn a lot of pushback from community boards throughout the city, even in the Bronx. And, basically the plan is designed to allow for building more housing, loosening up decades-old rules that put caps on how high buildings could be built in certain places. And a lot of the pushback is coming from communities that are worried that more density, meaning, like bigger buildings in their areas, could ruin the character of like a single family home area, could, hurt the property values, bring, more people in than the community has to accommodate. They don't have the services they're
So
arguing.
in other words, a lot of the things that Bronxites have been talking about, let's say beginning in the 70s when we began to rebuild the Bronx at that point, how are we going to structure our neighborhoods? How are we going to structure our communities? The mayor, and I guess his motivation is understandable because we need housing, wants to just kind of open the doors and say, let's be developer friendly and let's build that housing that we need. Right? I mean, that's so let me just, for people in the Bronx, and these are your colleagues over there at the Bronx Times, put out a piece about it, that community boards 3, 4, 7, and 9 voted yes. So people just identify where your community board is. They voted yes, but community boards 2, 5, 6, 8, 10, and 11 have voted no. And certainly 8, 10, 11, and 12 are ones that really have many private houses, right? So they're the ones. But now, one of the questions that came up, as I understand, about opposition is affordable, that there doesn't seem to be enough structure in the deal that would insist that the new buildings, okay, we tolerate the new buildings, but are they for us or are they for other people who might come into our communities?
Right. So, yeah, that was definitely, I guess, set aside from the concerns about more density in lower density areas. People are concerned that there's not enough in this deal to make sure developers are building affordable housing. There's one provision called the Universal Affordability Preference that's basically, it would allow developers to build at least 20% more housing in a development as long as that housing is affordable. But of course, people are saying, what is defining affordable? And
here we go. That's right.
Yeah, it's kind of the age-old issue there. And then also, Oh wait, I forgot what my other point was. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
But
I'll answer. I'll do two things. One is the parking situation.
oh yeah,
Currently, rules stipulate that new buildings, I think it was 33% of the new apartments, you need to make sure you have established that number of parking spaces for each apartment.
yeah,
They're actually talking about doing away with that concept. I understand the movement toward bike lanes and the city bikes in every neighborhood and all that. There are a lot of darn cars in the streets. And I don't know if, we know what we're dealing with congestion pricing. There's been a lot of talk about residential parking. Um, I'm not sure how you deal with that problem if you put up a big new building and you have maybe 75 apartments in it, and 50 of them may have cars, 25 of them. That's still a lot of extra cars to put into a neighborhood where we
yeah,
have no parking, right?
yeah.
Um, and
Oh,
then go ahead. What were we going to say?
well, I would just say the argument that the Department of City Planning, which is behind drafting these proposals, has made in response to that is, just because they're doing away with the requirement that there be off-street parking built with these buildings doesn't mean that developers in areas where it's necessary to build that kind of parking, they could still do it. They just aren't required to do it.
Uh, you know, I'm sorry. I'm smiling. My reaction to that is how naive they are. If, especially a lot of the developers putting up buildings, if they can squeeze in a bunch of apartments as well, as 5 new apartments instead of putting in a parking lot and sell that. So I don't know. Maybe I'm naive. I mean, I don't know. The other thing was people would be allowed to rent out, like if and this maybe benefits the people with homes, because they could rent out like a basement apartment more readily than they can now, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, that would be our proposal that I think people are, at least in lower density communities, are worried about the areas getting like overpopulated
right.
for what's
Overpopulated.
currently there.
And then the other question is, if everybody is doing that, the regulations. I mean, we have a hard enough time keeping regulations on our existing buildings and homes. So anyway, I guess we'll wrap that up. But where is it at now? What does it go to the council? And what is the council votes like? What is your sense? Is this going to happen? Is it going to be amended further? What's your sense?
Yeah, so the next stage is the City Planning Commission has to officially approve it. Presumably they will, because it's their plan.
It's coming
Um,
out of the mayor. Yeah.
and then the next step is it goes before the city council for a hearing. So presumably it will be similar to the hearing that we saw with the City Planning Commission, maybe even bigger. It'll be lots and lots of people testifying, I'm sure. And
Right.
then after that, the city council will vote on it. I'm not exactly sure where all the council members stand on it. I think, the ones that are in more dense areas already are likely leaning toward it.
Vote no.
'Cause-
Yeah, I think that it might go accordingly to the community board. It would be unusual for a community board to say we like this idea while their council member is against it. I mean, I don't want to make any rules, but usually that goes together. And I'll just add before we just go on to something else, that because the Bronx is getting those 4 new Metro North stations, this is a fundamental question, because there's going to be decisions made on development around those 4 stations, and what the rules are, what the zoning rules are, is going to matter a lot. So anyway, the other thing that you wrote about, getting into New York City politics, is the story about advice and consent. The city council submits legislation for a ballot referendum on checking mayoral appointment power. And there you see the council speaker. So the whole idea is the council wants to, if the mayor appoints the deputy commissioner or something like that, the council wants to be able to approve that, or at least review it.
Yeah, so currently the council has this power, which, basically a mayoral appointee, the mayor will nominate someone to lead an agency. They go before the council for approval or denial. Currently, the council only has that for two city agency heads, the head of the Department of Investigation and the corporation counsel, who leads the law department. They're basically the city's lawyer. This bill would expand that power to 20 additional mayoral agency heads. So the Department of Buildings, the Department of Health, the Department of Housing Preservation. So it would vastly expand the council's power over who the mayor is choosing. They say it's a good government measure aimed at preventing the mayor from making patronage appointees and generally just appointing people that are unqualified to run an agency that they're being assigned to. The mayor says,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, just real quick, the mayor says this bill would politicize a process that right now is not politicized and would potentially slow down the wheels of
I was
government.
just going to say, you start putting more rules in and requiring votes, on the other hand, maybe, given some of the mayor's appointees and some of the associates, they've had, I don't want to review them all, but there have been a number of questions. And so there's a part of me that thinks, well, you know what? The mayor may have brought this on himself, picking, somebody's friend or somebody's brother to a cousin to be, an official of some sort. And then that person has some question marks raised about donations or about other issues. How do you see this playing out? And by the way, are both of these going to get resolved, as we get to 2025? You think it's going to be a next year thing, or is the dialogue ongoing?
The city of Yes is definitely going to be resolved by the end of this year. Or, well, at least I'm pretty sure it is. And then on the advice and consent bill, so the wrinkle in this is that the mayor established this commission.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
called the Charter Revision Commission.
To kind of, we're almost out of time, so I'm going to move it forward to kind of review what is going on. And but actually, if they're talking about a referendum, they would have to get it done by November 5th, right? By election day.
Yeah, so the commission would have to advance its own proposals to be on the ballot on election day by August 5th. So that's coming up.
August 5th. Oh, that is coming up. Wow.
If the commission comes up with its own proposals to put by August 5th, that preempts anything that the council is putting forward.
Right.
So
all right.
It's kind of complicated.
We got to run. Well, we're going to call you back and ask you to sort it out as things go on. We're just always thrilled to have Ethan Stark Miller, who is just doing a great job over there at AM New York. He's covers politics, state politics, New York City politics, all the stuff we need to know. Thank you, Ethan. You be well, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
Great, no problem. All right, we're going to take a short break. We're going to switch gears, and you're going to hear about a Bronxite maybe you never heard of, but he just passed away, and he's one of really the great New York City teachers. Don't go away. Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. This next segment is going to combine some joy and a little bit of pain as well. One of my dear friends, his name was Tom Porton, passed away this week. He is a legendary teacher, former New York City school teacher at James Monroe High School, the former James Monroe, which was eventually split up into other schools. And he was dearly loved by his students and colleagues and everything else. So we found two of his students from way back when. I don't even want to count the number of years. So we'll say, and I got to get their names right because I knew them when they had different names. It is Janelle Roundtree. Nice to see you, Janelle.
Nice to see you too.
Thank you. And also Sarah Mejia.
Hi,
Sarah,
Gary.
so nice to see you.
You too,
Um,
Gary.
the reason we kind of knew each other is that, and we're going to show you, I did a news story about Tom Porton in the 90s when BronxNet first started. And both of these young women were in that story or other stories, whatever. Anyway, Janelle, let's just start with you. Remember Tom Porton for us.
Quirky man. Um, but he was instrumental in my life in high school. I can't tell my story without including him in it, because he just really was that teacher that guided me along through all 4 years. He introduced me to the HIV/AIDS peer education program, and he was like my cheerleader, cheering me on, guiding me to the point where I was able to get scholarships to attend Howard University and was able to receive other awards, but it would have been none of that without his support and his influence. And I'm glad that I was able to continue my relationship with him until the end.
Like in a way, like all of us. And I know I visited him once, and former students were coming by. Many of them professional people like you are. So, what do you do now after Howard University? What did you end up doing with the rest of your life?
Well, now I'm an HR professional. I work for one of the prominent health insurance organizations in New York City. And so I've been doing HR for over 20 years now.
And you have family?
Yes. So I'm
Well,
married and I have two children.
isn't that wonderful? I'm going to go to Sarah, and then I'm going to ask you each this follow-up question. So, Sarah, who I knew as Sarah Clement,
Yes.
you are going to be, you're in one of the videos we're going to show. Tell me what Tom meant to you and what he did for you when you were a high school student at
Well,
James Monroe High School in the 90s.
Mrs. Porton made zero period fun. No one wants to get up and go to school early in the morning, especially at 7 a.m. But Mr. Porton, he was a man who, not only stimulated your love for learning, but he also stimulated your other senses because he would take us, to different restaurants where we have cuisine in different uh, countries. For instance, we would go to Japanese restaurants, Indian restaurants. We would go to different places where your taste buds were stimulated, your eyes were stimulated when you went to the Broadway performances that
Now,
we
I was going to
visited.
interject because I know he took so many students to see Broadway shows. I think his vision was he understood what it was like to grow up in the Bronx, and
Absolutely,
many of the young people don't get the opportunity to see the
exactly,
world. So he taught you
absolutely,
about food. He taught you
right.
about all that. So here's my follow up to Janelle, and I will ask you the same thing, Sarah.
Okay.
Um, geez, we're going to run out of time very quickly.
Mhm.
What did he actually do that Janelle was just talking about that
Mhm.
changed your life aside from the activities? Um, Go ahead.
Well, when I first applied to colleges, I didn't get accepted to not one of the colleges I applied to. It was about 12 different colleges. And he knew that I wanted to go away for school. I didn't want to stay local because I wanted to kind of find myself on my own without, being at
Right.
home and commuting back and forth. So he said, Sarah, why don't you look at this college? This paper just came in, and it was Marymount College in Tarrytown, New York. It was an all women's college.
Right.
And I said, I was hesitating at first because I said, oh, all women, but I was so interested in living off campus. So when I applied, I was accepted. So thank,
I do want to move on because I don't want to run out of time. I want to be able
okay.
to show this piece, but that changed your life. I
It
mean
changed my
that
life because my roommate was there when I met my husband, and I was with my roommate from
there you
college.
go.
So
So
he poured into my future, into my life.
tell me about your family.
Oh, I have my husband, Santana Mejia, and 4 children. So we've been married for 24 years.
And much like Janelle, you can't think of getting where you are without that. Janelle, answer real quickly. What was it that he actually did that inspired you so well, aside from all the things you did?
He spent time with us. He took time and he exposed us to different things, and he gave that advice, that guidance that we often needed
Right.
to be able to move forward in our lives.
Okay, here it is. This is Gary Axelbank on BronxNet in 1994, I think, 1995. Let's take a look. For James Monroe High School's Tom Porton, the craft of teaching goes far beyond standing in front of a class. Oh, as an English teacher, he's been in front of many classes since he came to Monroe in 1968. But it's the worlds that he's opened up for his students that have taken this short, bearded man from the Bronx all the way to Emporia, Kansas, as the first New York City teacher selected for the 4-year-old National Teachers Hall of Fame.
I would have been just one of those kids that sat in the corner and never did anything, just worried about my schoolwork. But Mr. Porton is like, when I'm here with him, I'm outgoing. I go, I do things, and I'm always involved in school activities.
When I came to this school, I really didn't have a high self-esteem. Like, my father just died, and I was going through a lot of things at my home. And then I met him, and my life changed because he introduced me to so many different things.
Tom is so special. The theme of our school, if you will, is James Monroe High School, where dreams become reality, and Tom is one of the reasons why youngsters' dreams are realized.
There were some people at Monroe who told me, don't go there, you're going to be weighing over your head. And Tom Porton said, that's great, why not Harvard?
If you want to follow Tom Porton around during a school day at Monroe, you'd better bring your track shoes. For one, the phone never stops ringing in his crowded, noisy 5th floor office, which is usually bustling with activity. On this day, it's Baskets of Love, which are toiletries and candies sent to hundreds of AIDS patients throughout New York City hospitals. And along with the goods, which sadly are luxury items for many terminal AIDS patients, Tom's HIV/AIDS peer education students teach other Monrovians about AIDS and inspire them to write personalized letters of encouragement that are included in each basket of love. By the way, under Tom's guidance, this award-winning AIDS peer education group has brought AIDS prevention information to Bronx street corners and has commandeered all of the city's high schools in annual AIDS awareness conferences. So with Baskets of Love production in full swing, Tom is off to the next project. He hauls the TV roll-around to the first-floor auditorium, where he helps set up the special educational dramatic production that he's arranged for Monroe students on this day. And then, on his way back upstairs, Tom pauses to advise a colleague. And then, it's a few moments to work on the scenery for the school's upcoming production of a modern Cinderella play that Tom and his students have written. In a flash, Tom is off to check on how his AIDS peer education students are doing in the classroom. And then, it's back to the auditorium to get the day's performance underway. And then on the way back to the office, when the elevator operator has taken an early lunch break, of course, it's Tom Porton, who happens to have the right key and gets the show on the road.
Tom Porton has been the heart and soul of Monroe for the last 25 years. The interest he puts into his children is so unique that I have never found anybody else who has such a commitment to the kids and to everything that goes on about the school.
Just stepping into his shoes for 2 days, I was exhausted. So I don't know how he does it.
Tom Porton was an English major at New York University, where he also got his master's. Selected as Monroe High School's first coordinator of student affairs when the concept was established by the Board of Ed in 1971, Tom boasts of having created the city's first ever high school street fair, which cleaned up a drug-infested alleyway near the school. But aside from the years of teaching students to work for their communities, which has catapulted students like Sophia Quintero to important careers as public service executives, Tom has turned youngsters' lives around, sometimes by saving them.
I remember one young lady whose name I won't mention on camera, in 1975, who, during a rehearsal of one of my shows, climbed up on the catwalk backstage and threatened to jump off because she was so depressed. And for an hour, I was trying to talk her down. And today she's a lawyer.
when I was just depressed at any given time, he would be there in my sad times. He would be there in my happy times. We would laugh together. Or when I'm sad, he would help me or console me or get into contact with my mother or whatever. But whatever he had to do, he'll do it to make me happy.
He makes students independent. He showcases their talents. He brings success to them. He's just the best.
He will go 100 miles, not 9 yards, to do anything he can so that a youngster reaches his or her potential. He is truly the quintessential person as well as educator. I love Tom Porton.
Congratulations to Tom Porton for being named into the National Teachers Hall of Fame. No one deserves it more than you.
We love you, Mr. Porton.
From James Monroe High School, Gary Axelbank for BXNY.
That didn't bring a smile to the faces. I got a little choked up myself. Sarah, you saw yourself in there. That must have been something. Maybe you could come up with just a thank you or something. Now, we will say he was in Cathay House, and even at the age of 76, he was still doing programs with senior citizens. He was whizzing around there in a wheelchair.
He started the Kindness Club.
The Kindness Club. You see, we all know that. Anyway, Sarah will give you each a chance just to make a statement, and I will thank him also. He was my dear friend, my family friend, and I have so much respect for him. But go ahead, Sarah, and then Janelle.
Well, he taught us how to love students. And when you love a student, the student carries it and gives that love back to others. And because of Mr. Porton, I'm a teacher now, and I'm able to love my students in a way that he did. I stimulate their senses too, with trips, with outdoor excursions that include camping, things like that. And so when you feed into someone and you put love into someone, they spread it out. So he will never, his memory will never die, and everybody will pay it forward. He had many people who loved him, and his students were his family as well.
Isn't that beautiful? Janelle, I'm sure you echo those sentiments. We'll give you the final word.
I do. Mr. Porton and he knew that he was loved, and we loved him dearly. And like Sarah said, we were also his family. And what he poured into us will continue to live on, because we will continue to pour into others as he did for us. And I hope that we will be able to continue on in his legacy in that way.
Isn't that beautiful? And there are hundreds of students, thousands who would say the same thing. Incredible. Anyway, hugs to both of you. We all love Tom Porton. May he rest in peace, and may all the things that he did with you wonderful young people who are now a little older will live on. Thank you so much for joining us, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. All right, we got to say goodbye. We got to run. We're way over time.
Okay.
We'll see you next week.